The wage board is dealing with that.
Okay. On the side of agriculture, I know agriculture is obviously our number one industry in the state, a major impact for our entire state. With this minimum wage impact, have you looked or studied or heard of the impact this is going to have to our agricultural industry, our farmers, our dairy farmers, our vegetable and fruit farmers, the impact that's going to have on their operations if this were to go through and signed into law?
In other words, you're talking about the $15 number. Have we looked at that? Anybody spoken to that? No. No, I don't think you. We haven't.
Okay.
I don't know what's over on the second floor, what they're doing.
All right. Mr. Farrell, as always, you're very gracious with your time. Thank you for your time. And Mr. Speaker, on the bill.
On the bill.
Yeah, just briefly, Mr. Speaker, my colleagues, just on a couple issues. And I mentioned it briefly. It might not seem like a high-profile issue, but the issue of organ donation in this state is something we need to address. Hopefully we can find the funding necessary to help this organization deal with more education, more outreach, more awareness, because as you know, there are 52 registries across this country. In New York, it's number 51. We're number ranked. The national average of registration is 50%. New York is 23%. The state of Montana, number one, is 87%. We can do a better job. I know this is an issue a lot of people don't want to think about, but you never know when one of your loved ones is going to need a life-saving organ transplant. So hopefully we can find some funding in this budget. Not a lot of money, but just enough to kind of start this process to help change those numbers. On the issue of our transportation system and parity in the MTA and CHIPS, first of all, I just want to say, you know, the state DOT capital plan, that benefits everyone. I know a lot of people from upstate say it's an upstate, downstate thing. It's not. Whether you live in New York City or Long Island or in the MTA region, you're going to benefit from a DOT statewide capital plan that has a necessary investment. And traditionally, prior to 2010, those budgets, the MTA budget and the DOT budget, have always been equal. It did not happen in 2010, and what happened in that 5-year period, there was a $5.2 billion disparity between the MTA budget and the DOT statewide capital plan. And I just want to make sure to my colleagues who are proponents of MTA funding, I think MTA funding is important. I have industries in my district that support the MTA, but we're one state, so let's look at this DOT capital plan to make sure we have parity, because it will affect everyone from Buffalo to New York City to Long Island. Everyone will benefit from parity in the DOT capital plan. I do want to say thank you for recognizing the importance of the CHIPS program, because that too benefits every part of this state. I hope we can do a better job as the budget gets closer to increase those numbers more, given the unmet needs that our local communities face across this state. Just last week we had over 700 highway superintendents up here talking about this issue. With the property tax cap that's limiting revenue growth, with the billions of dollars in unmet needs, this is a safety issue. How many of us put our kids and kids and grandkids on a school bus every morning? God forbid one of those roads or bridges go out. We need to make sure we're making the necessary investment in our infrastructure, both at the local level and at the state level. And I believe if we get parity, if we can increase funding to our local infrastructure, we'll be doing a good thing. And on the minimum wage issue, and listen, no one wants to increase wages more than I do in this state, and we all want to increase wages, but we have a lot of concern about the impact this is going to have on a number of industries. Number one, our small businesses that are burdened with a crippling tax and regulatory code that continues to stifle job creation and economic growth. We are rated 50th out of 50 states in business climate. That is not going to spur encouragement or excitement about investing private sector dollars in this economy. For our healthcare industry, I know you guys have put some money in there for the first year, but the studies have said from our healthcare, from the hospitals, our nursing homes, our home healthcare industry, and for our developmentally disabled, we're looking over at $3 billion, $4 billion when this thing is fully phased in. We have a Medicaid cap that we're dealing with, a spending cap. That's going to be detrimental. I met with one local not-for-profit organization that serves the disabled in my community. Their annual budget's $7 million. This minimum wage increase proposal would increase their annual budget by $1.5 million. That will cripple the services they can provide to the very people they're trying to help. We need to think about these numbers as we're talking about this issue. Small school districts. I had one school district in my district that said, This minimum wage increase would increase their budget by $280,000 or an 8% increase in their tax levy. How are they supposed to do that when they're facing a 0.12% increase in their levy? And for our small family farms, it is estimated this is going to cost over $500 million a year. But if you really want to see the impact it's going to have to our farms, look at what it's going to do to their net income. And their net income is the amount of the farm families have to pay their own living expenses, repay debt, reinvest in equipment, buildings, and livestock. Just right now, the total cost in New York, labor costs in New York, are currently 63% of net cash farm income. Right now. That's compared to the U.S., which is 36%. A 50% increase in the labor costs for our farms will reduce overall net cash farm income by 38%. 30%. Mr. Speaker, my colleagues, our farms, our family farms, they're the backbone of our economy. They provide food to the people who live in our cities, in our towns, in our villages across the state. We need to be very careful about the proposals this proposal will have all across this board, all across the state. Again, I want to increase the minimum wage as much as anyone. I want to increase wages as much as anyone. But we can't do it on the backs of the very people we're asking to invest and create jobs and to provide the food to our families. This is, in my opinion, a very dangerous proposal, and that's the concern I have and a number of my colleagues have. So I thank you, Mr. Speaker, for your time, my colleagues, for this debate, and we look forward to working with you as we work closer to address an on-time budget by April 1st. Thank you.
Mr. Goodell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the chairman yield?
Speaker, yes, Mr. Goodell.
Chairman yields, Mr. Goodell.
Thank you, Mr. O'Farrell. First, I want to commend my colleagues. I think there's a lot of good in this budget. I appreciate the increase in library aid, for example, the increase in a lot of the agricultural programs that are important. Certainly the school aid increase is welcome news back home. CHIPS is good. I had a question on community colleges. I understand that the Assembly's One House bill increases the base aid by $100 a year, which
Yes.
I think is very positive. But I also understand that the enrollment in community colleges is going down. What is the difference, the total aggregate amount that's in this year's One House compared to the aggregate from last year?
The amount of money or people?
Total amount allocated for base financial aid for community colleges.
Yeah, that was got an answer. He gives good questions. He gives good questions. No. What was the We have to go to the bottom of the book to get the answer.
While they're looking, if
You can
all
ask
right.
another while we're waiting.
Sure, we can move on.
Yeah, we'll come back.
Just interrupt me when they get that answer. My concern, of course, is that even though we've increased the base aid for community colleges, my concern is that the total amount is actually going down, the total appropriation. But once they get to the bottom of that, we'll know
Say
that.
that again.
Even though we're increasing the base aid
Yeah.
because of declining enrollment, my concern is that the total appropriation is actually going down for community colleges.
No. What's
And
going down?
once they get to the bottom of that, they can let us know. I had a number of questions on paid family leave.
Is net up? Why net? Because of the increase in money. We're looking here. It went down. The number you said it went down. We have it here. It went down in 11-12, but it's been going up, and it is now flattened out. So last year and this year seems to be the same.
I would respectfully suggest that we might want to actually increase our aid by increasing that more than 100. In other words, when we increase the base aid by 100, the actual appropriation, as you point out, was flat.
Yeah.
Can I raise
It's
some?
not to increase the amount of money we give them, and it usually matches what's going on. In other words, the money we gave was to make sure that if they give you the full amount from TAP, you would get the amount equal to what you were paying to go to the school.
And yeah, and what's happened is because of declining enrollment and fixed overhead,
Yeah.
our community colleges.
Yeah, I mean, there are other things too.
Right. Unpaid family leave.
Say that again.
Regarding paid family leave
Yes.
proposal. Now, it's my understanding that the paid family leave proposal contained in this budget is, in many respects, more generous than, say, California. California has 6 weeks.
Yes,
This has 12.
yes.
California allows employers to require their employees to use 2 weeks of vacation before they're eligible. This one has eligibility immediately. California has a 1-week unpaid waiting period before you can collect, not in New York. It's immediate. California pays 55% of wages. New York is 67%, up to 67% of the statewide average.
Yeah.
So my question is, I looked at the California cost, and the California cost of their program is 0.9% for 6 weeks. If you adjust it for 12 weeks, you're looking at about 1.1% of payroll. The New York average weekly wage is $12.66, which suggests that the cost of this program would be in the range of $13 to $14 a week. Yet this budget proposal only has 45 cents. In other words, based on the California experience, it looks like the actual cost is nearly 30 times higher than this budget. Why is it that the Assembly majority believes that they can provide a program that in many respects is more generous than California and do it for about 1/30th of the cost?
Well, the 45%, 45 cents that we put in was established by an actuarial study. Would it be, if it was not, it would be adjusted by the Department of Finance Service if it isn't. So
Well,
we did do some studying to come up with the 45.
well,
Yes.
the governor started out by saying that his proposal, which is very similar in terms of the payout,
Yeah.
would be 70 cents a week. And then his office reported to Cranes that it went up to $1.40.
Yeah.
Why is it that the governor's numbers, initial numbers, are several times higher than the Assembly's?
He may have a different way of what he's doing. I'd have to see what he's doing and why, and then that would tell the difference. By the way, going back to California, one of the things I've learned is that California can do things that we do and to do the exact same, and their numbers are always different. I know that Medicaid and other things, medical programs, they do things different than we do, and we give a better program than they do. And everybody says, look at their money, but when you look at where they're spending their money, it isn't what you think it is. In other
Fair
words,
enough.
I wouldn't hold on what you read that they're absolutely giving you the full story.
Fair enough. It's very difficult to compare any two different states, and I appreciate that. So I also looked at the New York State experience. And as you know, right now in New York State, a woman who is pregnant, has pregnancy, can get 6 weeks automatically of paid leave,
Yeah.
8 weeks if it's a cesarean section,
You're right.
and that is a payout of $170 a week maximum. And under this proposal, that will go from $170 a week up to a maximum of $860 a week. And instead of being 6 weeks, it'll be 18 weeks. The first 6 plus another 12.
Yeah.
In New York State, you can buy disability coverage either through the state insurance fund or privately. And the state insurance fund has been politically correct since 2010 with a gender-neutral premium. But the private sector has a different rate for men and women. And the rate for women reflecting this pregnancy coverage is 2.5 times higher than it is for men. And at $170 a week for 6 weeks of coverage, it's $35 a year. So if you take the actual New York numbers, double it, because it's going to be 12 weeks, multiply it by a multiplier because it's not going to be 170, but could be up to 860, increase it to reflect the fact that personal family leave covers more than just pregnancy, you're looking at a cost based on the New York experience of at least 5 times higher than included in this bill. What is the methodology that was used to come up with a number in this bill, which is a fraction of what the governor's reporting, about 1/30th of what California's experience is, and just an extrapolation from New York is 5 or 6 times less than what we would reasonably expect? Is there any actuarial study that was done by a professional or anyone that give us some ideas?
Well, no. To go back to begin with, the numbers you were giving in the beginning of your presentation, those numbers are not acknowledged by the people in back of me. They think,
Well, the good news is they're all online.
yeah, they're all with me.
And maybe this was just an interest of mine,
So
but
they
I was
think-
trying to figure
they
out where
think
that
you're-
number is coming from.
They think your numbers don't work correctly.
And I would agree.
And by the way, for that thing that women have to pay more than men, I would ask the woman, how did she get pregnant? By herself?
Well,
Come on.
I'm
It
just
should-
pointing
it
out
should be
that
equal, but we won't go there.
we can discuss that in more detail, and I can help share some of my experience in that area if that's helpful, but I know you don't need it. So moving back on, looking at the bill itself,
But, okay, leave it alone. Continue.
the bill is very clear. It actually says it in a couple of different places that the employee share is limited to 0.5% or 45 cents, whichever is less.
May I ask one question? It looks like the paid family leave, the executive did not provide a number. What number are you using?
The 70 cents was that I saw on an actual recording of the governor at a rally,
Yeah.
and the $1.40 number was what Cranes reported.
Okay, so it's it's one of his speeches.
Right.
Okay.
Now, there's a couple places in the bill that makes it very clear, at least 2 or 3 times, that the employee share is limited to 45 cents a week.
Yeah.
But what I found interesting is twice, in one section, it makes it clear that every covered employer shall contribute the cost of providing these disability benefits in excess of the contributions collected by the employee. Not once, but twice. It was like right after each other in case we missed the first section. So this bill is absolutely clear that if the 45 cents is not enough,
Yeah.
the employer picks up the balance, right?
Does it say that? I didn't read it.
This bill is clear that if the 45 cents is not enough to cover paid family leave, the shortfall is picked up by employers.
Yeah. Do we have that today? Did we say that? No, we're not going to change the law. And we would have to go, as I said, and have the financial people look at it and then come up with some answers.
This bill not only adds paid family leave, but it takes the basic disability benefit and increases it from a maximum of 170 a week to 860 a week. But the employee contribution is not increased at all. So, and I understand that not everyone has a math degree, but I think everyone understands you can't increase the payout by a factor of 5 and not increase employee contributions at all without having a substantial financial impact on employers. Would you agree that this
No,
proposal
again, I would
is going to
say
be
the
very
same thing.
expensive?
Finance services would adjust the employee's contribution if it is not high enough. They will be the ones who make the decision.
But only as it relates to paid family leave,
Yeah.
not the rest of the disability program.
No.
And in California, the cost of paid family leave is only about 12% of the total disability program, which means in New York, we're asking employers to pick up roughly 80 to 90% of the increase in cost on all the rest of the program that we're increasing from 170 to 860, right?
Yeah. Well, what we hear is that the program is not being used that much, and because of that, the price is very cheap and it's very low. And
I
so
suspect
the
that's about
present
the
program has money in it we can use. This is one of those things they don't want to use.
Is there any appropriation, by the way, in the budget for paid family leave in this budget?
Do we have any money in for this? No.
Then,
This is another one of those 2 years from now starts.
so again, my question is looking at the Constitution. I had to bring that up at least once in this debate, or you wouldn't think you were talking to me. As you know, the Constitution says very clearly, no provision shall be embraced in an appropriation bill unless it relates specifically to a particular appropriation. And that language is actually also picked up in our Assembly resolution itself, like the third or fourth whereas. So if there's absolutely no budgetary appropriation relating to paid family leave, why is this bill in the budget?
Well, the answer to that is you first get the money, then you figure out what you're going to do with it. Very simple.
Mr. Farrell, as always, thank you very much for your comments.
Mr. Walter.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would Chairman Farrell yield?
Yes.
The chairman yields.
Thank you, Chairman. Just want to start, I want to clarify something that you talked about with Mr. Oakes regarding the taxes, the occupancy tax with towns and villages. It's my understanding in this resolution that you're allowing towns and villages to impose occupancy tax without approval from the legislature,
Yes.
but not cities and counties.
No, we only gave them the power.
Do we not trust our cities and
The
counties?
other ones have it. They already have it.
Not without legislative approval,
What?
state legislature.
They have to come, that's what it said. They do have to come to us, yes.
But
But the towns and cities, no.
But-
I mean,
but-
cities, towns, and villages. Yes.
so cities, towns, and villages are
No,
okay,
not
but
cities.
counties are?
Towns and villages. No, there's towns and villages.
Okay. In this resolution.
Yes, that's what's here.
Right.
There's something on the other thing.
Do we not trust our
No, we
counties
didn't.
and
We
cities?
didn't change it.
They're not okay, towns
No.
and villages.
We're just doing it for towns and villages.
Well, we might want to consider doing it for counties and cities as well, don't you think?
Well, you know what happens if I think about it? It's to stop. Think about this. It may be there to stop people plopping hotels in your property that you didn't get approval for. You follow what I'm saying? Because they're all, the county is with, the city is with, the village is within the county. And what we're doing is we're saying to them, you can decide what you want, which protects them from having people come on top of them, I think.
Well, they have zoning laws, I think,
Yeah.
that they can
So
handle.
they'll
that.
go to them instead of the county.
I don't, sure. Well, I mean, the local
give 'em business.
municipalities have the zoning laws to handle that. That's a whole nother thing. Small business tax cuts. The governor had about $300 million in small business tax cuts. Do those carry through in your proposal?
Yes.
So there is. Could you just kind of what are we talking about with the small business tax cuts? What kind of a tax cut? Is it the same? Is there changes? What have you done?
It is exactly as the governor gave it to us.
Okay. Now, it's my understanding that we're proposing to increase minimum wage about 67%, which is close to a $16 billion increase once it's fully implemented. but we're only offering a $300 million small business incentive. That really doesn't come close to offsetting that cost, does it?
We have a lot of other programs that people can get, veterans can get it, so you get other ways, so it's not just one group. Does that answer? Is that right? Yeah.
Close enough. Okay. So, all right. So we're not quite offsetting the major 67% increase, $16 billion imposition on our small businesses. Really just $300 million.
Yeah. But we have other monies doing the same thing under other titles.
Okay.
Is that what we're saying?
That would equal a $16 billion increase in minimum wage?
Yes. Say that again.
So those other things that you're talking about, those other offsets, that will help to, or will go all the way to offsetting the $16 billion increase in minimum wage to help keep our small
No,
businesses
we didn't. We never put one against the other. You heard the question? No answer.
No.
We didn't do that.
Now, I also noticed there's a big tax increase in here as well on the personal income tax side. How much total are we talking about, taking into account that the current law will sunset on January 1st, 2018? How much of a tax increase are we talking about?
In addition money, that's the, yeah. Yeah. It'll be about $5 billion we're going to make.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, we're going to have
Was
$5
that-
billion.
B? Was that a B?
Yeah, billion, yeah.
Billion?
Yes.
A $5 billion
Yeah.
tax increase.
When the
Okay.
taxes come in,
Wow.
we're going to get back. But we're giving back some of it because we're also doing a cut.
And how much is that?
Right. The cut is about $2 billion. We're cutting the middle class about $2 million. $2 billion.
2 million.
And we're doing also we're also helping those people who need income tax credits. We're changing that so you'll get more help there. So
That's
we've done a lot of work for the middle class, who seems to be the people that are really getting whacked lately. So we're trying to help there. And then this additional money will be used to pay the programs that we're putting now when it comes to full power.
That tax cut, you said $2 billion. Over how many years are we talking about?
Which question? Say that
So
again.
you said that the tax cut that you're putting in is $2 billion.
Oh, yes. When did that
Over
start?
how many years?
Per year, yeah, but when did it start? When does it start? That starts in 18. It matches. In 2018, we will do it. And it would be $2 billion a year cut. It's a continuous cut.
So $2 billion a year cut, $5 billion increase, about a $3 billion net increase
Yeah,
in
that's
tax.
about, it's going to be about, we're making about $3 billion.
Okay. So we're raising taxes $3 billion. We're cutting small business taxes this year by about $300 million.
Yeah, but just for the record, that money is just for millionaires, nobody else. And it goes up in categories, in steps. So it's somebody make 1 million and 5 million and above that. So we're not stealing money from starving people.
But you mentioned the earned income tax credit. My understanding, the governor made a big deal in his presentation, his budget / state of the state presentation about corporate welfare to McDonald's of about $700 million because of all of the subsidies that they have to pay their workers because they're not earning a living wage.
Yeah.
And you talked about increasing the earned income tax credit, which I think is great. How much are we cutting our Medicaid and our welfare programs because we won't need to fund those as much because we're increasing minimum wage? Are those cuts reflected?
No, we have not cut anything there.
So the $700 million the governor talked about wasn't real?
No, I don't know. I don't know. I have to hear his whole statement before I answer that question. Did you hear that, boss? Okay.
Just,
I don't want to be called downstairs.
oh, I don't think you answered to the governor, Denny. I don't
Yeah,
think that's true
we'll
at
get a
all.
better answer.
Okay, so then there's no offset because we're going to be raising all of these people out of poverty with this $15 minimum wage, but we're not saving any money in any of our poverty programs.
Well,
I'm not
the
really sure.
idea
I
is
don't
not
really
to
get
say,
the math.
I would say this. What we're trying to do is to help those people, as I know that's what you want to do,
Of
is
course.
help the people that have the most problems. So there are different types of problems, and I think these programs are set to deal with those problems. The earned income tax credit is to help. Maybe they won't fall into that category of the earned income tax credit if we raise them to $15. Maybe that may help them get out of the problem they have there. So we may be doing it in a better way and having somebody else do it. So you can't say, you know, it will take, when we're finished doing it, we'll then get a record of what happened and how it works. But we do know that if we put more money into the middle class, they need help, and this will help them do it. And so we're giving a cutback on their money, and I think that's a good point for them. And I don't think too many of those people are in the $15 area. I think the people that are doing the earned income tax are the people who are making $10 an hour. So it's two different types, and we're helping both of them.
But it won't help them enough that we can actually start reducing our poverty programs, the cost
what?
of our
Say that
poverty
again.
program. Is that it won't actually help them enough that we can start seeing a reflection of that in a reduction in the cost of our poverty
No,
program.
we won't see it until we do it. And we have to prepare for it, so the numbers, we'll do it in the next couple of years, but it will be where we're going.
So we'll make a 67% increase in the minimum wage, $16 billion, $5 billion tax increase on our job creators, and then we'll see, hopefully, maybe that'll work.
Yeah. And the
Okay.
job creators will still, many years ago,
That's a pretty big gamble.
in 1900, Henry Ford decided that he had to do something to get people to buy his car. So he started paying his workers at the time, I think it was $10 a day. Everybody screamed at him, "You're going to destroy us." And you can see as Ford stands today, it didn't destroy them, but he sold a lot of cars. This is not going to hurt those businesses. They'll get better product, and they'll do better. So it's not, we have to look back later and see what actually happened. When we did the $1 million back in 2003, I think we first did it, everybody said they're going to run out of state. It went down for about a couple of months, 1 year, then it went up, and we have more millionaires today than we had back then, and they're still growing. So we're not doing anything that's doing damage. We're just doing things that will help more people.
Well, I think they may be growing, but maybe not at quite the pace they are in other states that are much more competitive. But thank you very much. On the resolution.
Thank you.
Thank you.
On the resolution, Mr. Walter.
So we want to talk about our business climate, 49th in the country, 50th in tax climate, 50th place to retire, 50th. We're at the bottom. And this budget doesn't get us anywhere closer to the top. This keeps us at the bottom. The worst business climate, the worst tax climate, and the worst place to retire. This isn't really a budget. This is a fairy tale. And if you're an illegal alien, you're New York State special interest, you're a convict, you're milking the welfare system, then this fairy tale has a happy ending. But if you're upstate, if you're a hardworking taxpayer, if you're a small business owner, if you're driving on upstate roads and bridges, then this budget is a nightmare. And I don't think we should support any more nightmares in New York State. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Mr. McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the chairman yield?
Mr. Farrell yields, Mr. McLaughlin.
Thank you, Denny. Looking over the one house budget on agriculture, local assistance, 14 million is proposed. And I just want to ask kind of how we arrived at that number, and because the Senate one house is 31.4, almost 31.5. And last year, so the last year we were at 19. Actually, we ended up at 31 million last year, so it's a significant difference. And I'm bringing it up because our farmers are hurting right now pretty badly. So I'm just kind of wondering how we got to 14 million. It's a pretty draconian cut.
Where's the paper? He's looking at our pictures.